What's going on, guys? In this video, I want to give you some advice regarding overload training. And that is a quick little warning because I really want you to maximize your performance and stay injury free. So let's break this down. First of all, I don't recommend overload training for novices or just beginners in general. I don't think you need it, to be honest with you. What you should be doing right now is focusing on the essentials, the essential compound movements that's going to build your base. Because as you all know, a pyramid is only as tall as its base, all right? You need to first develop that cake, all right? And then you can ice it later. That's what intermediate and advanced programming is for, where you start addressing your weaknesses and all this stuff. But right now, you don't have any weaknesses. Your entire body is weak, and you need to strengthen the unit as a whole. So that said, you don't need to be doing these crazy lifts like rack pulls above the knee, cheat rows, cheat shrugs, or like really heavy band tension on your presses. It's simply not necessary. Right now, you need to focus on the essentials, being the squat, bench press, deadlift, barbell row, overhead press, even the closed grip bench, maybe some curls, some extensions. But the basics must be covered, because if you start doing all this overload training, well, you're only making your progress shorter and increasing your chance of injury for no good reason. Like, it just doesn't make any sense. The fact of the matter is that as a novice lifter, you can increase your strength exponentially every single workout. Every single workout, guys, we're talking 5, 10, even 20-pound increases on your lifts. Deadlifts, 10 to 20-pound increases very easily, right? If you're doing that twice a week, it kind of adds up. Bench press, same thing, 5, 10 pounds of workout. Like, seriously, by the 3-month mark, you should be squatting 2 plates for reps, right? If we're talking about empty bar here. So you have so much potential and growth to make, and it would be a shame to be wasting it with overload training when you just have to build your base, right? Trust me, guys, there will be lots of time for you in the future. Right after the 6 to 12 month mark, or even 15-month mark, you'll have all the time in the world to be doing these overload lifts. Right now, you simply don't need it. And of course, if you're going to follow concurrent periodization, which so many guys have done, you need to choose basic exercise selection, right? So don't be trying to copy me, right? That's not going to be the best thing for you. Rather, pick sport-specific movements that's going to build a classical lift. You want to keep this as specific as possible and refrain from doing these heavy overloads. It's not necessary as of right now, okay? Because honestly, you don't have a base. You can't even activate your nervous system fully in the first place. And given the fact that you don't have the form down and the structural integrity, you're probably going to break down. Like, if you're doing cheat rows and you can't even do like 2 plates strict, you're probably going to round your lower back and the form's going to go horrendous and you might get injured. So you need to have a base first. Like, for me personally, I only started cheat rowing once I already had a thick and wide back. Okay, it had already been years of me doing it properly, and then when I started cheating, it only accentuated it, and that's why guys like me don't get hurt, right? So you have to build your base first, and then you could ice the cake later. My second piece of advice is that you should not jump into extreme weights right away, because doing so can cause an injury, or it can cause you to experience a lot of soreness and not make the best progress. Here's what you need to understand. When you start doing this overload training, okay, there's going to be a lot of stress on the tendons and ligaments and the overall connective tissue as a whole. So if you're jumping to something astronomical, that's not really good for your body. You might experience something that you're not going to like, right? So for example, you see me doing these 1,000-pound rack pulls and all this stuff, and some guys honestly believe that I started doing it like right off the bat. Like, my 1 rep max was 500 off the floor, and then one day, boom, let's just go do 1,000. No, guys, this cannot be from the truth. If I would have done that, you probably wouldn't see me here today. What I did was I started with 405. Actually, I think it was even 365. I believe it was between 365 and 415. And I gradually built my way back up. And that's how you should do it. Try to make the weight a little bit heavier than your deadlift and build from there. I would say start with a 10% overload. No more than 10% overload, more than your deadlift. And just build from there, man. What you have to do right now is build the connective tissue and learn to tolerate the extra spinal compression that you're going to get from doing these heavy overload lifts, right? And the same thing will apply to any other exercise, whether it be doing band tensions or board presses, things of that nature. If you're going to use band tension, start with a lighter band first. Try to master the micro mini band, then the mini band, then the monster mini band. Then you could progress onto the lights. Personally, I haven't even messed with the average bands or the strong bands when talking about benching, because that is just way out of my league, you see? The more advanced you become, the more overload you could put on some of these exercises, right? So that said, please, if you're going to start doing an overloading exercise, you need to gradually work your way back up so that all the structures in your body fully adapt to it and you don't get hurt. That's the most important thing right now, because I know a lot of guys are going to say, oh, spinal compression, connective tissue. Listen, all of that could be avoided if you gradually build your way back up. If you do what I'm telling you, if you actually start with a weight that is similar to your regular exercise, and you focus on correct form and you gradually build it over time, you're probably not going to get hurt. Like, there's a very slim chance if you ask me. And again, I'm not a medical professional, but I can assure you, based off my experience and the observations of thousands of lifters, that people rarely get injured following this advice. So you need to gradually, please listen to me and gradually work your way back up. Don't be ego lifting and going 500 pounds over your 1 rep max on whatever exercise. You have to do it slowly. Slow is the name of the game when talking about overload training. You'll thank me later. Now it'll bring me on to my next point. Spinal decompression work and just mobility work as a whole. This stuff is very important if you're going to be doing these heavy loads and you're overloading your body constantly, because it's going to put a lot of stress. It's going to stress out your body. And one of the things that you must do is decompress your spine. That's just the name of the game. And I would recommend this even if you're not doing overload training. Like, if you're just doing regular stuff in the gym and you do a lot of squats and deadlifts. In fact, if you do any sport, if you compete in anything, if you do powerlifting, strongman, I highly recommend that you decompress your spine. And the two best ways of doing this, well, there's 3 ways I would say, for most guys anyway, would be number 1, hanging off a pull-up bar. Hanging off a pull-up bar is one of the best things you could do. It's going to decompress the entire spine. You could even do twisting motions. That could help you as well. Secondly, you could do reverse hyperextensions, one of the best exercises that was popularized by Louis Simmons. Basically, it's a restoration and strength builder simultaneously of the posterior chain. And each repetition, you got rotation of the sacrum and it's decompressing the discs. So that is a must-do exercise if you ask me. Like, it's really good, really going to make a difference. There's so many guys who actually broke their backs, but because they're doing reverse hypers, boom, their body's feeling A-okay, right? Another decompression method is to actually do the lat pull down. People don't really think of lat pull downs in that way, but trust me, it does have some amazing restoration benefits. It'll traction the entire upper back. It'll even traction the lower back because it's pulling on your body upwards. It's kind of giving you a different effect of pull-ups, but it complements it very nicely. And it'll also make your shoulders feel nice too, because at the top, you can kind of shrug, and then your scapula, there's like no impingement going on there. So if you have shoulder problems, it can help you greatly. So I would definitely recommend that you incorporate spinal decompression work. I think it's going to make a massive difference in terms of the way you feel. And of course, start doing some mobility drills, man. You don't want to be Mr. Stiff, Mr. Tight. If you got tight hips, stretch them out. If you got tight lower back, stretch in all directions, man. You got to make sure that you're not just some meathead who has huge muscles, but you're not mobile, man. Like, if you're getting hurt doing activities outside the gym, and if you just wake up, you're always stiff and you got to do all the stretching, there's a problem. There's a problem. Stretching should be a thing that you don't have to do like fucking constantly just to feel somewhat okay. You should have good mobility, if you ask me. Just like an Olympic weightlifter, just like a gymnast, right? You need to adopt similar things. And I'm not going to cover that on this channel because that's not really what we do over here, but you can look it up. You can look up some mobility drills. There's lots of things you can do for your thoracic mobility, shoulder health, lower back, hips. Just look it up. You're going to find amazing amounts of information regarding this topic. And then my final piece of advice regarding overload training is that you need to program it correctly, okay? Now, there's lots of ways this could be done, right? Some guys are going to use overloads as a supplementary work. Others are going to use it as a main movement, right? It doesn't really matter how you do it. The point is, you have to properly periodize the program, know when to swap out the movement, and choose the correct sets and reps for the given exercise, right? I'll give you an example. If you're going to be doing rack pulls above the knee constantly, you need to rotate the variation. Otherwise, the biological law of accommodation, which is when an organism ceases to adapt its environment, is going to come in and fuck you up. You're going to suffer from overuse, and your strength is going to regress. So in this particular case, I would recommend swapping it out for either a different rack height or changing up the band tension. Simple as that. So instead of doing classical rack pulls, 1 rep max, you could do rack pull with mini bands. That's 1 week. Week 2, monster mini bands. Week 3, light bands. And if you constantly make these little adjustments, you're going to be modifying the strength curve such that it changes your body every time, right? It's basically you're never adapting to your training. And that's what Louis Simmons is such a huge advocate of with his Westside barbell conjugate system, to never adapt, right? If you constantly rotate, you can't suffer from overuse for the most part. And that's why I have been able to max out for over 3 years without suffering any injuries, without having any problems whatsoever. I've been using the max effort method every single week for 3 years approximately, okay? To me, that is extremely significant, especially since I'm a drug-free lifter and I'm not even eating crazy amounts of food and I sleep like normal amounts there. So I think it tells you something, right? When you rotate the lift, it's absolutely going to help you out. And if you don't want to rotate it, then you can modify some of the parameters, like using a linear periodization approach, an undulating approach. But try to use some intelligent form of progression, a progression model that will make you stronger in the long term without hurting yourself. Like, don't just be going in and randomly throwing exercises and saying, okay, I'm going to kill my body with 10 sets of 10 rack pulls and all this stuff. Nah, it's not gonna cut it. You have to look at it in the general picture of things, just like you would for any sport. Like, If you're trying to raise your squat, for example, you're a competitive powerlifter, then you need to implement the right protocol so that you don't get injured from doing the squat. You need to implement the right protocol so that you have the best possible performance gain. Well, the same thing will apply to these overload lifts. You can't just be throwing it in and doing whatever you want. No, it has to be meticulously programmed. And for me, I use concurrent periodization, right? I just rotate the rack heights, I change the band tensions, and for me, that prevents me from getting hurt. And of course, it gives your body a little bit of a break too. You know, if you're rotating between different rack heights, below the knee, at the knee, above the knee, there's going to be varying degrees of spinal compression. The strength curves will be a little bit different, and just general stuff like that. So that's really all I wanted to talk about in this video. I hope that it gives you better insight regarding overload training. I really hope that you make the right decision and you implement it the proper way. Please implement it the proper way. So that's it, guys. Hope you enjoyed this segment. Please give me some feedback down below. And with that, I will talk to you all next time.